Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise? Today, we honor the memory of Giants president Wellington Mara, who passed away at the age of 89. Join granddaughter of Wellington Mara, Kate Mara, as she sings our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early
There was such respect for the man. Wellington Mara was a great American.
Wellington Mara, he's the ultimate alpha, not the traditional definition of it, but what it really means.
Wellington Mara was one of the best owners, if not the best owner in the NFL.
I'm very proud to represent the great bunch of men, our coaches and our players.
He let his coaches coach.
This is why you lift all them weights. This is why you do all that.
He let his players play.
Welcome home, baby.
And he took care of us on Monday.
Wellington Mara, this guy has stood behind me on the field and off the field.
He was really about football, but he also cared about players, not as a commodity, but as men.
Wellington Mara still casts a big shadow. So a few of us Giants set out in search of the man and the legend.
What do we got here? I've never been in this room.
The archives room. Wellington Mara saves everything.
The real home is here, the practice field, man. This is where it all happened.
Mr. Mara was there every day. I was like a sponge. Anything he said, I soaked it in.
It's awesome just to think back and have the memories of all three places where Wellington Mara viewed football games.
Mr. Mara, we were both lucky to have him, Tom. I know you know that. He's one of the patriarchs. There are only about 4 or 5 of them. He's one of them.
Mr. Mara was known as the Duke. Where did he get that name?
He was named after the Duke of Wellington. That was his nickname, the Duke.
I played my entire career for Wellington Mara. Why his name is next to yours on the football?
On every NFL ball, it says the Duke. That's for Wellington Mara, for the impact that he has made for the NFL.
The Duke is smiling.
I knew Wellington Mara for more than a decade. Yet his funeral was an eye-opener.
I think today to be here at the ceremony, it made you realize how much of an influence Mr. Mara had, not just on the football team, but just in people and the league, and just how important he was.
Mr. Mara was more than a Giant.
This is the Giant team that was referred to as the worst team ever to win the home field advantage. And today, on this field of painter's mud, we proved that we're the worst team ever to win the National Football Conference Championship.
He was one of the architects of the NFL, just asked the commissioner, Roger Goodell.
He was like Forrest Gump. He was like the Forrest Gump of the NFL.
It seems like whenever something major happened in the league that he was a part of it.
He was a giant in more ways than one. Remember, he was 9 years old when his father bought the team, 1925. Think of how many football games he watched. He saw the entire development of the league.
We're going to play the biggest football game in the history of Western civilization.
His father bought this franchise back in the 20s for $500.
Tim Mara, Wellington's father, paid $500 for the Giants. I mean,
It's a good buy, huh?
But I offered them $501. I don't know why they didn't take my offer, Roger.
My father was a bookmaker, although he'd never seen a football game. My father asked, well, how much would it cost? And I said $500. Well, he said an empty store with chairs in it in New York City is worth $500.
In the beginning, the Giants probably weren't worth $500, and neither Wellington nor his brother Jack thought a commissioner, Elmer Layden, was worth the cost.
This one here talks about the commissioner. Dear Jack, As far as the commissioner is concerned, I can't see Elmer at any price, much less at $25,000. Gosh knows there isn't much ability needed for the job. About
1945.
He didn't feel like it was financially necessary to pay someone $25,000 to run the league. Could you imagine the league now without a commissioner?
Hopefully not.
It was Mr. Mara who broke a deadlock vote for commissioner in 1960. His candidate, a 33-year-old unknown named Pete Rozelle.
Some of the people that were considered were Vince Lombardi, Paul Brown. Everybody had a candidate, and everybody had a reason why the other person's candidate shouldn't be elected.
Paul Brown and Wellington were the ones that went to Pete. He was a dark horse. He was a young general manager of the Rams who had not done anything to distinguish himself. Wellington Mara saw something in him.
He's the one who introduced Pete as a candidate. On the 23rd ballot, he got the vote.
23rd ballot.
23rd ballot. That set the stage for when he ultimately put the biggest step in with Pete Rozelle, which was they shared revenue equally.
The National Football League awards its television rights to the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Who gets all the money?
Well, the National Football League has a plan to divide the money equally among all clubs in the league.
For Wellington Mara to do that was one of the more significant things. If we had to do that today, we couldn't do it.
I'm going to say, do you see any owners today who will say, let's share the revenue?
For you to be in the New York market and say, I'm going to give up that revenue and give the same amount to Green Bay, that would be hard to do today.
I hope I would act like Wellington Mara. Might be a little easier to say that than to do it knowing what he was giving up. He was giving up money. He was giving up so much opportunity for the Giants where they could just dominate the NFL. They could win it every year because they could make more money and then they could pay their players more, but that's not what he was about.
He could see if New York got a commensurate percentage of television revenue and Green Bay got a commensurate percentage of television revenue. Green Bay would not be able to compete.
By sharing revenues, it made the league as a whole much, much stronger. I think that's one of the principles that has made the league what it is today.
The Green Bay Packers are world champions!
Revenues, for the most part, are shared. Everybody has a chance to win.
In 1960, he did something that now seems pretty commonplace. Allowed CBS to put a wireless microphone on Sam Huff. How much did that change the league immensely?
To bring that sound down on the field is an extraordinary moment.
I'm Walter Cronkite. Today you will play pro football, riding on Sam Huff's broad back. We've wired him for sound. That's the first time it has been done on television.
Sound down on the field. All those fans can't hear that. He brought that to life. It was like going from silent movies to, having movies with audio.
What do you do that for, 88? You do that one more time, 88, I'm going to sock you one.
Prior to then, you couldn't hear the players or hear tackles or grunts or anything else, and some of the things you shouldn't hear.
Hey, Sula, you better hope I never get back in there. I'm going to kick your ass.
More than 60 years later,
65 horsepower trap.
We're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party. Hey, let's go every drive. We got to think that way.
the effect of Mr. Mara green lighting a Sam Huff wire
Was it electric?
It was unbelievable.
can still be heard today.
Wellington had the courage to do that, and we continue to build on that.
Of course, I had to get the story of the ball.
The Duke. Wellington Mara's nickname. Why is his name on the football?
Wellington Mara was in charge of negotiating to get a football. George Hallis said, we should put the Duke on that. That would acknowledge the work that he did.
Each ball measuring up is given a name. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the Duke.
It has a personal meaning to me because I grew up sleeping with a Duke football. It was the first gift I got that I remember. The Duke was written on it, and I slept with that.
You have the Duke referring back to Wellington Mara.
I think about it every time I look at a football. You grip it, You kind of have the laces at the top of your fingers. The Duke would be kind of right around the palm when you have a ball.
What a throw by Manning!
A guy you shaking his hand, a guy who was the owner of the team that you played for your whole career. You know, his name's right there under your hand.
With the first choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select Eli Manning.
I wasn't drafted by the Giants. Ernie Accorsi traded for me.
The New York Giants have a man.
So when Ernie told me Wellington Mara was one of the original personnel gurus, I had to know more.
What do we got here? I've never been in this room.
The archives room. Wellington Mara saved everything.
All his notes? How many pages and...
He owned the team a long time.
What, can we go through some? Can I grab these?
Sure.
The archives show Mr. Mara was a football guy. In 1936, he used a Christmas present, a 16mm film camera, to document his friends and his Giants. It was the first NFL game film. I didn't know that he was such a scout, and that's really kind of where he got started. He was 17 years old.
Yeah, when he started, sure.
You can't drive until you're 17 years old, and he was running a football team.
He was a one-man scouting department. He was a very astute personnel guy.
His main concern was getting the best players. He didn't really give a crap about the business end of it, to be honest with you. Back then, you weren't trading text messages. Most of the scouting was done by paper articles.
Contemporaries raved about Mr. Mara's gift for aggregating information. Here's a little note. The crown now belongs to Wellington Duke Mara. Even the most experienced manager in pro football does not hesitate to seek the Duke's advice regarding the abilities of college players.
Good evening, and welcome to the NFL Draft.
Today, the draft is a colossal event. Wellington Mara was in the room where it happened for the very first time. In 1938, at the age of 22, Mr. Mara created the draft's first cheat sheet.
They were just instituting a draft. He would give his reports out to anybody who asked for them. They would write the names on a blackboard, and that's how they conducted the draft.
Chicago Cardinals, John Kimbrough of Texas A&M.
The Duke's emphasis on scouting and the draft became the bedrock the franchise was built upon, as every Giants assistant understood.
How important is the draft to an NFL team?
Well, I think it's the lifeblood of the team. I don't think he can play without the players, and the players, of course, are picked up in the draft.
He picked Roosevelt Brown, one of the greatest offensive linemen in the history of the league, in the 27th round. I mean, how did he know about it? He said, we subscribe to the Baltimore Afro-American. I said, when did you know that you had something special? He said, when he came to camp and none of the backs could keep up with him.
Mr. Mara found Hall of Famers like Frank Gifford, Sam Huff, and Emlyn Tennell.
Ham just goes and goes and goes.
Wellington Mara never really strayed very far from the New York Giants. It was his whole life. Of course, he lost, 5 years with the war.
In 1941, the Giants went to war.
The famous Giants football team, wearing their natty crash helmets, they look like the March of the Wooden Soldiers.
And so did Mr. Mara, as a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy.
He's a war hero, as well as being a Giants hero. When I first got here, I was still in the Navy. He didn't call me Phil, he didn't call me McConkey, he called me Commander. So he gave me a promotion, one above his lieutenant commander status.
What a catch by Phil McConkey.
Mr. Mara served as a radar operator aboard the USS Randolph and saw action in Okinawa and Iwo Jima.
I just cannot believe I'm holding letters from Wellington Mara to his family, during World War II. The radars had a bogey about 25 miles west of us. I gave them, quote, vector starboard 290 degrees. About 30 seconds later, they reported splash 1 bogey. and that was that. Just like sitting in an armchair and pushing a button to turn on a radio, and yet it was just the same, in a way, as though I had a gun and shot him down myself. My goodness. That's war.
Throughout the world, throngs of people hailed the end of the war.
Even before the Nazis and Imperial Japan surrendered, the Duke was planning complete and total victory against Eagles and Bears.
This is August 29th, 1945. As quick as you get a chance, will you type up a list of all the boys in service and draft lists 1941 to present? I'd like to refresh my memory.
When he came back in 1945, the team that won the championship in '56, he built. His soul was as a scout.
Connolly spots Rote all alone for the touchdown, and the Giants become world champions.
This ring I'm wearing right now is from the 1956 NFL Championship. It's the only ring he ever wore.
1956 championship. This one was a lot smaller than what they are now. I've always felt closer to that team than any other. 1938, those players were my contemporaries. I was one of the gang. In 56, I had been the general manager. I had scouted most of those players. I felt I had more to do with the success of that team than anything since. Since that time, I've retreated to being an owner, and I just own and go to the games.
I was a Giant my entire career.
Sams looks over the middle. He's going end zone. It is complete to the ball. Touchdown!
Wellington Mara was a Giant his entire life. The man watched more than 1,000 games in person and outlasted stadiums. So I asked the Giants' play-by-play man, Bob Papa, for a tour of Mr. Mara's Fields of Dreams.
Just think about this. 100 years ago, in the Polo Grounds, at the bottom of this bluff, the Giants used to play their games.
As I stand here and look out, it's hard to imagine that there was a stadium here.
Wellington Mara once told me, as a 9-year-old, the first ever game the Giants played, he gets a cold.
Well, I've always heard it, so I guess it's just not a rumor, it's real.
We were playing the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. I was just getting over a cold, but I remember my father saying to one of his friends, I'm going to try to put pro football across in New York today. Went to the game with my mother and sat in back of the Giant bench, which was on the shady side of the Polo Grounds. It was quite chilly. And after the game, she told my father in no uncertain terms that she didn't like the idea of the Giants and her son sitting in the shade when the visiting team was over there in the sunlight. So from then on, the Giants were always on the sunny side of the field in the Polo Grounds.
This weather is wicked, bro. How we got a hot bench with hot weather?
Giant Stadium, our bench, we were always in the sun. The visiting team, they were in the shade. And I remember looking over there on those really cold, windy days going, man, I'm glad we're in the sun. Is there anything left of the Polo Grounds?
Just these stairs.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad we're wearing sneakers coming down these stairs.
Well, speaking of sneakers, very appropriate. You know why? The sneakers game.
The famous sneakers game.
1934, Giants are playing the Bears. The field was complete ice.
At halftime, we were down by 13-3. We had an assistant clubhouse man named Abe Cohen. We put him in a taxi cab and sent him up to Manhattan College to get the sneakers for the basketball team. Almost all of our players changed from the football piece to the sneakers. It sparked a great comeback.
The ball went over. Touchdown, the Giants lead.
We thought we won because of the sneakers.
Oh, those pretty white sneakers.
Mr. Mara and the Giants became the toast of the town when they moved into the house that Ruth built. So that's the new Yankee Stadium. Where was the original?
We're standing right where the original Yankee Stadium is. We're probably on about the 45-yard line. In 1955, Bert Bell, the commissioner of the NFL, goes to the Mara family and says,
2 Texas oil men were willing to pay $1 million for the Giants, provided they could move the team to Yankee Stadium. $1 million was a lot of money in those days.
What do you think the Maras said?
All right, we'll play in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, why not us move to Yankee Stadium?
The
Giants' first year, they wound up winning an NFL championship.
And the Giants become world champions in a stunning win over the Chicago Bears.
It was a championship game Mr. Mara's Giants lost that vaulted the NFL to new heights.
Wellington Mara new Yankee Stadium gives you the sense of this is really important.
It's a great tribute to professional football, to the New York Giants and the Baltimore Colts, that 70,000 fans will show up here today.
The 1958 championship game started football to overtaking baseball as America's pastime. Everybody in America who was a sports fan saw that game on television.
United States begins from Amici and the ball game is over. And the Baltimore Colts are the professional football champions of the world.
Phil, look at this. To commemorate the greatest game ever played, think Mr. Mara's sitting on this bench?
No chance he's going to sit on this bench, and you know why. Because it's not the greatest game ever played if the Giants lost it. It took barely a decade and a half for the Giants to outgrow Yankee Stadium.
Every family always dreams of the day they can move into their own house, get away from the in-laws.
So Mr. Mara moved to New Jersey.
Where exactly is the original Giant Stadium?
Well, as I walk this way towards MetLife Stadium, I would say Giant Stadium was about right here. This is where Bill Parcells was probably yelling at us, telling us how bad we were.
Some of these guys got to get their head out of their ass around here.
The Giants draft you in the first round of 1979. You know the reason why they had that pick so high, right?
Yeah, the fumble. Yes. Thank you, Joe.
We're inside 30 seconds. The Giants lead 17-12. The Eagles have no timeouts. Wait a minute. Here's a free foot. I don't believe it. The Eagles pick it up, and Herman Edwards runs it in for a touchdown.
That changed the Giants in many ways, and that brought George Young in here. Mr. Mara now let others pick the players, and in the 80s, Giant Stadium became a home.
Sam for Bavaro, touchdown.
You feel like you've done something right, and people that are working for you have done something right. The other people have done it, George Young and Parcells.
A lot of visiting quarterbacks, they would tell me how much they hated playing here. We had a really good defense, and they hated to win, Bob.
Intercepted. There goes Taylor. Touchdown.
The 1986 NFC Championship game against Washington. What was it like that day with the papers flying everywhere?
Today, the NFC Championship match between the Washington Redskins and the New York Giants. The Meadowlands are windy today.
Friday at the press conference, they said, how do you feel about the 40 to 50 mile an hour winds for Sunday's game? I go, what? Even for Giant Stadium, it was over the top.
Looking back on it, it was a one-in-a-lifetime scene.
Sims looking end zone. He's going to run. Lobs it. Touchdown.
The high winds, the cold, the papers all blowing all around like a blizzard.
Rolls of toilet paper. Pieces of cutout program. Newspapers pouring down like a blizzard on Giant Stadium.
If there were words to express how I feel, I don't know what they are. I'm just so very happy.
So there you have it, Phil. In one afternoon, we visited all three of Wellington Mara's football homes.
And just to think, it all started with just $500.
We lost the game because of illegal procedure.
Wellington Mara was the owner every coach wants to have. Take it from me and my old boss, Bill Parcells.
So we were both lucky to have him, Tom. I know you know that. He's one of the patriarchs. There are only about 4 or 5 of them. He's one of them. We got there, the team was established, the league was established.
Let's go 2 slant 19. Let's get the operation moving.
The hard part was over. Now, if we could just win, fortunately, we're both able to do that.
The Super Bowl champions are the Giants.
And the New York Giants are the Super Bowl 42 champions.
Here's an owner that knew football, you know, and he prided himself on being a scout. I mean, that's really what he was. Mr. Mara expected championships.
No, you always think Super Bowl.
I want to congratulate Wellington Mara and Bill Parcells for an extraordinary performance.
In his lifetime, he won 6.
I'm just so proud of
what these guys have accomplished, I think I could cry very easily.
It was Mr. Mara who discovered two of the greatest coaches in football history.
All you have to know is that the Giants were, in the 50s, the cradle of coaches. Two of the greatest coaches of all time, Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi.
Here are the comeback Giants of '54, Coach Vinny Lombardi and Tom Landry.
Well, he's very close to Vince. They used to go on vacations together. I think they went to Rome and Italy. Many a nights he spent the night on my parents' couch.
I remember him sleeping on our couch on more than one occasion. My middle name is Vincent because my godfather was Vince Lombardi. He was our offensive coordinator. He'd bounce me on his knee, he'd give me candy and soda. I remember he had really strong hands and he used to grab me by the arm and I couldn't move.
My father and Vince Lombardi were classmates at Fordham. Vince, of course, played on the football team. My father was at every one of those Fordham games.
Bobby LaRue crashes the line, only to find Fordham's magnificent forward wall holding him at the line of scrimmage.
After the '53 season, when I was appointed the head coach, Mr. Wellington Mara recommended Vince Lombardi to me as an assistant coach.
Connolly comes over to the sideline for instructions from backfield coach Vince Lombardi.
Mr. Mara and Coach Lombardi were golfing buddies. They also changed how coaches coach in a way you can still see to this day.
As I grew up under John Fox, who was the defensive coordinator, I would be responsible for getting the Polaroids and bringing them over in between series. And I always found it really cool that my grandfather was, kind of the first one to do that.
That was a hand-me-down from Vince Lombardi. They did that when he had been at West Point. And when he joined us, the first thing he wanted to do was, who takes the pictures? Well, no one took the picture. So I volunteered. I used to take those pictures. We'd put them on a sock, weighted down with some cleats, and throw them down from the upper deck to the bench.
In-game adjustments have never been the same.
Three technique and a one technique here.
Polaroids, the offensive, defensive side of the ball, they couldn't live without those pictures. You'd take it for granted that it was always there, but I guess it wasn't always there.
That's that guard come. It's still going to be back, or you?
Right now, we have a whole staff of video people photographing the formations on the field. Back then, he was really the first person to do that.
Mr. Mara was also the first person to see something in Tom Landry.
My first recollection of Tom Landry was going to Houston to sign him. He was one of our defensive backs.
This time it's intercepted by Landry, and Tommy takes off. 51 yards to the end zone.
He was so confident of his ability.
Nice going, Tom.
He was sure he could do the job, and he made you sure he could do the job. Steve Owen used to give all the lectures, both offense and defense. And one evening, he gave the chalk to Tom Landry to go over that defense for us. Tom took it in stride as though he'd been doing it for as long as Steve Owen had been doing it. And from then on, he was really the designer and the implementer of our defense.
This is defensive coach Tom Landry.
While he worked for Mr. Mara, Coach Landry introduced defense as we know it today.
The New York Giants, we actually developed the 4-3 defense.
Certainly, you talk about defense.
You nine, baby.
That started in the 50s with the fans here, with the defense, and all that stuff.
Imagine the regret when they lose two of the best 10 coaches in NFL history.
The Packers have just taken the championship.
I can remember saying to my father, why couldn't you have just kept one of them? I would have had a much happier childhood if you had just kept one of those two.
So, what was Mr. Mara's secret? How did he spot such good coaches?
We got the toss out of Strahan. We got the fullback trap.
Just get out there and run like hell and catch it, all right?
When you thought about Mr. Mara, the people that he hired, Vince Lombardi was in his class at Fordham. So he had background information about Coach Lombardi. Coach Landry played for the Giants. When he hired him as a defensive coordinator, he knew him well. You were an assistant coach. He watched you operate. I was an assistant coach. He, watched me and knew me.
Mental toughness, right? The mental toughness, okay?
He was a football guy.
And the fact that we both had a little Irish in us didn't hurt. The rest of your life, man, nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
Bill Parcells always had 6 or 8 or 10 players in it. He handled the rest of the team through them.
He's a stone-faced, that Barbero now. You know what the hell he's thinking. I'd hate to have to fight that son of a gun.
Vince Lombardi treated everybody the same.
Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody tackling. Just grab it, everybody.
Jerry Kramer said that. He treats us all the same like dogs.
The Green Bay Packers, once again, are the world champions.
It's really an eye-opener to see there's no one right way to do things, and there are a lot of right ways to do it.
The Giants have accomplished something that many people thought they would never see.
Drop play Barber, runs right, cuts right, works his way outside. Touchdown, Tiki Barber!
I played my entire 10-year career for Wellington Mara. Our relationship went beyond football. And so did my boy Shockies.
So I do sports radio now. Whenever the fans call, they talk about Giants Stadium being our home. But the real home is here. This is where all the blood, sweat, and tears happens, is on the practice field. And, the beauty of it all, Shock, is that in the corner, we know who's sitting over in the corner.
Absolutely. Mr. Mara was there every day.
He'd always have his bucket hat on.
Yes.
Coming up to the Giants after I was drafted, I'm sitting there one day and I say to Joe Pisarcik, who is that guy that sits over there every day and watches practice? And he had that hat on.
Who is that old guy that keep on walking around the daggone field? That smile, that old-ass hat. Who is this person? And why is he able to walk around and watch us? Inspire? Well, who is this guy?
Looks at me like, are you kidding? I said, no, who is it? He goes, that's the owner, Wellington Mara. And I went, oh my God.
Super Bowl number 21 between the Broncos and the Giants. Shotgun formation. Sims has the ball. Sims throws, end zone. Ball, touchdown!
Phil Sims in this game, 22 completions and 25 attempts.
We knew how much that game meant to him. We were coming out of there with a victory.
Coaches always say we win for each other. Everyone always wanted to win for Wellington Mara.
I'm very proud to represent the great bunch of men, our coaches and our players.
Football is all about relationships. It's a people business. Wellington is the epitome of a people person.
Absolutely.
And it was always about the relationship.
To see how he treated people as if they were all the starting quarterbacks was amazing.
I think our obligation is to our fans. I think the management, the staff, and the players exist purely to satisfy their fans.
He never took praise for a winning team, but he would take the blame for us not putting out the product that the fans wanted.
Mr. Mara, I was thinking about your dad and our relationship with him as players, but also the fans' relationship with him.
He was always corresponding with fans, and a personal relationship with the fans is something that he took very seriously.
I see the old school letters.
Yeah. This one here is a fan who's been tired of sitting out in the inclement weather, and why can't you put a dome? He writes back that I'm a fan like you, and I've sat out in all kinds of inclement weather, and I can't truthfully say that I ever enjoyed the sensation.
He wrote to everyone. So many prisoners would write to him. I said, I think you're the only owner in the NFL whose picture is on the wall of Sing Sing, because I was sending autographed pictures.
Wellington Mara was more than just a great man. He was a good one.
Football was extremely important to him, but I think his legacy is how much he cared. He was a caring, loving Christian man.
My family is here in force today.
Family was important.
I would really like them to share individually in this day. I realize, however, that if that were to be done, I'd exceed my allotted time.
Wellington and his wife Ann had 11 children and 43 grandchildren. Each of us felt like part of the family.
He cared about players, not just as a commodity, but as men.
We weren't just players to him. We wasn't just employees. We were part of his family.
He had lived it for so long. He understood how hard they had to work and
everything they had to go through to be where they were.
A lot of these players, he felt very much like they were his kids.
That was one of the saddest days of his life, the day that we made the decision to move on from Phil Simms.
Dan Reeves brought me up to his office, and he goes, Phil, I got some really bad news. He goes, we're releasing you today. And I literally said, you're kidding, right?
Got a shocker for you. They dumped Phil Simms, best quarterback they ever had. If that ticks you off, you're not alone. Even co-owner Wellington Mara didn't like it.
He was angry. He says, look, I disagree with what they're doing here today, and I want you to stay. And we're going to do things to make sure you can stay here. But he was going to make changes in the front office with the New York Giants. And I remember going, Mr. Mara, please don't do that. That's just going to make it worse for all of us.
Well, as I give you this jersey, I know that I share the mixed emotions of all the Giant family.
I just appreciated him always being there, win or lose.
Sir.
Like the tough situation I went through against San Francisco.
We've got the glamour game for you today from Giant Stadium.
I was having a fantastic game.
Hey, that was great coverage by Mark Collins on Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice got behind me in this one particular play.
Montana, Rice.
He scored the game-winning touchdown.
No flags are down. Touchdown. They get Jerry Rice out there on Mark Collins, who's covered them all day superbly.
And Rice stuns this crowd.
That was the lowest point of my career.
Every player has left the game except for Mark Collins.
I go to the locker room, and Wellington Mara, he shook my hand and said, good game, Mark. That handshake was huge for me.
He did so much for so many people and asked nothing for himself and didn't want to be recognized for it.
And this looks serious for Rich Seibert.
It was a spiral fracture, ankle shattered. I got compartment syndrome after the season, so they had to cut me open on both sides. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. The one constant was I'd wake up and Mr. Mara would be sitting by my bed to make sure I was all right. And I think he was there pretty much every day. He didn't have to do that. It made you want to come back and do it for him.
And the Giants have won Super Bowl 42.
His biggest trait is when players at all levels, when something wrong was going in their life, he was there to help them out. Mr. Mara was never going to give up on Lawrence Taylor.
Taylor entered a drug rehabilitation clinic with Giants owner Wellington Mara paying $7,000 toward his treatment.
He has an affliction. He knows he's an addict. The demons of that affliction, and they are terrible demons, have been trying to do what no coach or no player in the National Football League was ever able to do, put LT down for the count.
There were some problems, but I never had to work. He was always there to cheer me on and help me up. He was a good guy, very good guy.
Walter Mara, this guy has stood behind me for a lot of years, on the field and off the field. Without him, I would not be here today. So I want to thank Walter Mara for his kindness and generosity. Thank you, Walter.
He was very, very religious, very spiritual. He did those things behind the scenes because he didn't want the credit from the people he was doing for or the people on the earth. He wanted it for the man upstairs.
One day we were sitting in the doctor's office and the doctor was discussing treatments and what were his expectations. My father thought for a minute and said, I have this young quarterback who has a chance to be pretty good, so I think I'd like to stick around and watch him play a while. My mother looked at him and said, you have a wife, 11 children, and 43 grandchildren. I would hope you'd want to stick around and see them too.
Fasten your seatbelts. Broncos by 6. 10 seconds to go. Manning over center. Takes the snap, drops back, blitzes on. Barber gets it. Manning drifts, goes to the end zone. Touchdown! Eli Manning comes of age.
After we won the game, I remember giving Ernie Accorsi a big hug because I knew it was going to be my father's last game.
We were at Sloan Kettering, and they told us that, this is it. And my dad said, I don't want to die here like my brother Jack did. He wanted to die at home. So we brought him home, and we allowed a few players to come.
What did you do when you had a chance to sit with Wellington Mara when he was on his deathbed?
It was a surreal experience. I know the whole family was grieving, and I remember getting the rosary beads and having them in his hands and praying.
I remember on his deathbed, I sat next to him and just said, Mr. Mara, I want to thank you for making me a Giant. I'd be a different person if I was somewhere else. Then the next day, he passed away.
It's probably the proudest I've ever been, watching my daughter sing that with all her cousins around her. It was just very emotional. Thank God we kicked their ass.
Toss left goes to Barber. Tries to get the edge and does. 35, 40, down the left sideline.
The first play of the game, 59-yard run down the left sideline.
Barber to the Redskin 40, to the 30, to the 20, and run out of bounds.
First play, just worked perfectly.
Out of respect to Wellington Mara, out of respect to the whole Mara family, we wanted to go out there and win that one for him.
Manning back to pass, throws it over the middle. He's got Shockey, runs out of a tackle to the goal line, touchdown!
We had the rivals watching the Redskins that week. The clouds separated and the sun came out. It wouldn't have mattered who we played. We would have beat anybody.
Later in the game, I had another big run down the other sideline.
Down the left sideline to the 40, to the 30, to the 20.
And I get caught. Timmy McDonald, his grandson, he said to me,
"Hey, you gonna score one? Because you told me you were gonna score one." And he said, "Don't worry, I'll get one."
Barber the setback. Draw play Barber, runs right, cuts the 2 times for the goal line, touchdown!
I dropped the football as I always do, and I blew a kiss, and I turned around like immediately and picked that ball up. And I ran it over to Timmy, and I said, "This is for you and your grandfather, and I love you guys."
You pass the football along to one of Wellington Mara's 40 grandchildren, Timmy McDonald.
I still have that ball. It's in my office today. Yeah, it was a lot of emotion.
And the New York Giants, with the passing of owner Wellington Mara, hand the Mara family an emotional 36-0 victory.
Looking at all the fans with their signs, thinking, wow, Dad, this is what you did, all this. He would have loved that. But he was watching. He had a good seat.
Duke is smiling.
The Duke is still present in today's NFL.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's the 100th anniversary season for the New York Giants.
From the way the game is broadcast to the masses,
the National Football League has a plan to divide the television money equally among all clubs,
to how the sounds reach fans like no other sport.
We've wired him for sound. The transmitter is embedded in his pad.
Hey, D, let's have the offense here.
Drops back, under pressure, chase, sack, Dexter Lawrence.
His fingerprints are all around us. From the way the game is evaluated on the field to acquiring players off it.
I was praying you weren't off the board. You ready to be a New York Giant?
From game film to the way coaches make adjustments on the sideline.
I used to take those pitches and throw them down from the upper deck to the bench.
Gotta run the ball. Let's go.
Throughout history, throughout time, every game and every play bears the mark of the Duke.